Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today I will be talking about compost. Today I am going to be showing you how to make compost with my dad.
My name is Jimmy White and I'm an organic horticulturist here at the Organic Centre here in Mussinburgh in County Leitrim. What's your first question?
What is compost?
Composting is the process of aerobic fermentation which involves the biological decomposition of organic materials. Now what does that really mean? It's basically when organic material rots down. How it actually decomposes is done by microbes. Microbes is about the 90% of the composting process. So when you're composting, two most important things to remember is the carbon-nitrogen ratio and your temperature. You're going to read an awful lot about composting, an awful lot of videos out there about composting. Here at the Organic Centre we have 25 years experience. So I'm going to pass on that experience to you. The carbon-nitrogen ratio is roughly 25 to 30 to 1. But what does that mean in real terms? Our composting method here is roughly 2 greens to 1 browns. Greens being the nitrogen, all your waste from your garden, your grass clippings, etc. Your browns being your twig, your bush, cardboard, stuff like that there. It's very important to have that ratio correct. So roughly, if you're using barrows, 2 wheelbarrows of green to 1 wheelbarrow of brown. And then you basically layer it like a cake. Start off with the browns and work your way up. Your greens, your brown, your greens till you get to the top. Now, very important, before you start off the composting process, you need an activator. It would be helpful if it was something like farmyard manure, which is cow's poo. Even soil might do it. Preferably not finished compost. That'll start the microbiological process and getting it kicked off. So then we're going to move on to the temperature. Temperature is really, really important. If it's a case that you allow you don't turn your compost or you have too much nitrogen in the compost, that temperature is going to rise and rise and rise. And eventually you'll end up with a mushy mess. You don't want that. So along with getting your carbon to nitrogen ratio correct, you then have to get your temperature correct. Your temperature you kind of want to get it to is above 60 degrees. Why is that? You're going to kill off your disease and your weed seeds. Anything higher than that there, you're going to stop the thermophilic bacteria. What's thermophilic bacteria? They're the heat-loving bacteria that continues the process of composting, besides from your mesophilic bacteria, which is what you find in the soil, the normal soil that you have out in your garden. So you can use a thermometer in the beginning to help you. Once you're composting for a while, you get used to it. You kind of know when you have to turn your compost heap. Roughly, it's 48 to 72 hours. Once your temperature stays at that, then it's time to turn it. A lot of mistakes that people make in composting is they keep adding to the compost heap without letting the maturation phase, which is the final phase where people think earthworms are involved in composting. No, they're not. Earthworms are burrowers. They live in the soil. They'll die with the heat. It's red wrigglers are the little worm that is a surface worm that does all the compost. It's a little bit of trial and error. You have to kind of work out your own system, but at the same time, roughly 2 greens to 1 brown. A benefit to mulch up is best, or break up brassicas and stuff like brassicas that are the likes of broccoli and stuff. Break up the stems really, really well.
What size should compost bins be, Dad?
Well, roughly you want your compost bins to be roughly 1.5 square cubic meters. Now, if you're at home and you say, you know, you've got a decent sized garden or some sort of back garden, pallets will do. So you could have 4 pallets, hinge them together, have this one on hinges that can open up, and something like this here. You can use black plastic if you want, a little frame to cover them. That's roughly the ideal size for anybody who's home composting. Now, not everybody has a back garden and not everybody has that ability to have an area outside to have a composting. So there's composting bins that people can buy, and these are them here. We've done a good bit of research on these composting bins. They're quite difficult to make compost with them. However, when you get ones like this here that has the lid and everything goes in here at the top, like I said earlier, it's an aerobic process. The microbes who do most of the work in composting need air. So when I was saying earlier about starting off your composting bin to get an activator in there, you also have to make sure there's enough moisture. Not too wet, just the right amount of moisture. For every 1.5 cubic meter, you're talking about roughly a litre of water. That's enough. The microbes need water to move around the compost. So something like this here, obviously I'm going to be straight up, I wouldn't really recommend them, but if that's all you have and you want to compost and you want to reduce the amount of waste, you can drill some holes into these bins here, all around the bins, all the way down. Like I said, keep the same ratio, 2 to 1, if it's 2 buckets of greens to 1 bucket of browns. It's going to get warm in these a lot faster. So you got to, again, you know, either if you use a thermometer or if you can try to judge the temperature as best you can. So here's our first bin. You can use a 3-bin system. So here you can see where this is topped up. This is the greens that are here, and it's going to be finished off with brown. This will start decomposing, the temperature will start to get up, and eventually it'll be moved on. So in the 3-bin system, it'll go into the second bin, then into the third bin. So there you see now, this is after about say 6 weeks, because we're in a polytunnel here, it goes out a little bit quicker. This is what our final compost should look like. So it should be friable, no smell, absolutely no smell at all, and a nice brown colour. So when you get to that stage, you've got perfect compost.
Is there any other way of making compost, Dad?
Yes, Lucius, there is. So we want to look at, just for you, the viewer, you want to make compost. You don't really want to be having to think about it too much, and you want it to turn out well. This 3-bin system is probably the best system. If you can't use that system and you're tied to a small back garden or whatever the case might be, and you want to use the bin, just remember to make sure there's holes in it, it's aerated, you've got your activator in there, and you're still using your carbon to nitrogen ratio. If you're in a city or a town and you don't have access to the 3-bin system, if you want to compost your food, you can use a tumbler like this here. Make sure all food is dried liquid free as possible. You still need an activator, you still need to try to get your carbon nitrogen ratio correct, but in this case it's already aerated. You can continuously turn it every few days, and that will help get the oxygen back into the system and cool it down. This system can make compost a lot quicker. This system here outside, you're talking anything up to maybe 3 months. Now, if it's actually food waste, and I mean food that's been scraped off the plates when you finish your meals, you can use the bogashi system, a Japanese system. It's literally very similar to a food bin. It's a little composting bin with a tap on it, and again, you have to get as much liquid out of your food as possible. Then you layer the food. So you put a layer of food in, and with the bogashi system, there's a little bran comes with it. So you sprinkle that on. There's instructions on it. You put another layer of bran, layer of food, layer of bran. This makes really potent compost. You cannot add this compost straight away to your plants. You either have to mix it with your compost, small amounts of mix with large amounts of compost, and also if you put it straight in the ground, you can't plant into the ground for at least 10 to 12 days. So just to remember that when you're using the bogashi system. But again, for people who live in cities and towns, it's a way of composting food that normally go into the bin.
What type of materials can't you?
Most things will compost. So what you really need to know is what can't you put into the bin. So you're looking at diseased plants, perennial weeds, annual weeds and flowers, same thing again. And then of course, the meat, fish, cooked food, oil or fat. The reason for this is you're definitely gonna attract rodents. This is why the bogashi compost bin is really handy, or the tumbler. And then obviously plastic and glass, and then most citrus fruits and that the microbes, that will slow down the microbes. They don't like it.
Thank you, Dad, for explaining how to make compost. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because we will be making our own compost in bins in the future.